just like the women in the video you saw used to do manually. So those calls are connected over copper lines, but it's distinct from the copper network, which is owned and operated by Chorus. So what we're looking to decommission are the actual switches, which means basically that landline and some broadband technologies will be delivered in the back end over wireless and fibre instead of over copper. Now the reason we're doing that is simply that this technology is at the end of its life. It was built in the 80s. I think we've bought every spare part there is available around the world, and it's getting very hard to find people with the skills to maintain it. So with that in mind, we need to start shifting people over to newer technologies that we know will be resilient over the long term. For the average customer, it doesn't really change their experience day to day. They still have a landline phone, they still connect to the internet. It's just how it is connecting in the back through the network that will change. And this isn't a new change. In fact, most customers are making this change on their own without us prompting them to. Since 2017, 500,000 have moved off the PSTN because often services like wireless or fibre offer a superior service. So that's why they're doing that themselves. But we're now at the stage where we're proactively doing that. And we're taking a suburb by suburb approach to ensure that we can provide all the necessary support as we do so. Can we shift to the next slide? So in terms of what the alternatives are, we give customers the choice of what they would like to move to. We make a recommendation based on what they currently do and how they use their services now, but at the end of the day, it's up to them to choose. So moving to a wireless connection means that the modem in your house connects your landline or connects you to the internet through our closest mobile tower, so just like your mobile phone would do. And if you connect to fibre, it's a physical connection just like copper, but obviously with the fibre optic cable instead of copper, and that's what connects your landline and you to the internet. So we're now rolling this out in Ashburton. It impacts around 1,060 customers. So that's the amount of customers it impacts who are Spark customers. There will then be additional customers from other providers like Vodafone, for example. But we would be the largest in the area. So basically, from March, we let our customers know that we would be stopping selling these products, any products connected to the PSTN. Because we own the PSTN, we wholesale it out to other providers like your Vodafones or 2 Degrees of the world. So this impacts all phone and, all connections through the PSTN. And then on the 29th of April, we sent advice to all our customers in the area, providing them notice that they will need to change. Now, we always provide 90 days notice, but in this instance, we're actually providing close to 5 months because it won't be until after September that we actually decommission the switch. So customers currently have that advice, so we're now in the stage of helping them to make that shift. And on that note, I'll hand over to Janet to talk you through how we actually do that with our customers.
Cool. So reaching our customers to communicate this message isn't a one-size-fits-all. So we have a wide variety of means of getting in touch with customers to at least start them on that transition. So standard letters, emails, some outbound calling, door knocking, leave behind, so reminders for those customers who are mobile on our mobile app. We will send them notifications. And also when we're getting later in the time period, recorded messages to prompt customers when they pick up the phone. Alongside of that, for Ashburton, we're trialling something a little bit different. We've actually added an additional support channel, and that is we're working with the local store because they've got really good contacts in the community, so they can also support customers in that transition. So as Lila said, we provide that minimum of 90 days notice. At the end of that 90-day notice period, or longer in context of this batch, what actually happens is we will then provide 31 days notice warning customers that we're heading into towards disconnection activity. So there is a further grace period in the hope that they will get moving and do contact us about the change. So obviously we hope there are as few as possible people in this category. So when we get into the phase of the disconnection notices, we've translated those into 5 different languages to try and assist with further reaching customers. But when we get to the end of that 31 days notice, customers who haven't contacted us about a change, they will be disconnected. It's what we call a soft disconnection. So for that 1 month after, that customer can still get through to 111. That calling is still enabled, and they can easily get through. They can divert through to Spark to arrange the plan to transition their line. At the end of that time period, then we do fully disconnect the line. Okay, so power cuts. This is something that comes up in our conversations with our customers. So like most modern phone systems, fibre and wireless modems will stop during a power cut. We recommend customers keep a charged mobile phone handy for emergencies. There's also a recently published 111 code by the Commerce Commission to support those vulnerable customers who have made the transition to wireless and fibre. So any customer who believes they're eligible for that support can register as a vulnerable user once they've made the transition off the PSTN. And then another really important area that we're conscious of is taking care of customers with vulnerabilities or special requirements. So we have another layer of support for this. We make available in-home visits to those customers to help them get set up, make sure everything's working and they know how to use it. And we're really interested in hearing if there's anyone you're aware of in your area that we may need to do some extra work with. Because we want to make this as easy as possible for these customers. And also for our business customers, we're also looking out, checking for if any of them are likely to be experiencing financial hardship so that we can work with them again to make the transition as easily as possible and as low impacting as possible. And again, we're happy to hear from anyone that's in that situation that may need additional help from our business teams.
So I think that's a pretty whistle-stop tour of the PSTN decommissioning process, but hopefully it's given you a good overview. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Janet and Leela, for that presentation. And we'll go now to some councillors for questions. Councillor Falloon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. The question I have is basically, if I've got a landline only, and I've also got a cell phone, in actual fact, if I'm just happy with my cell phone, don't require a Wi-Fi, I don't need to do anything.
That's right. If you don't want a landline phone or broadband and you've got a mobile, then you could just let those other products go. There's no other difference there.
Well, the only thing I'd recommend, if you decide you don't need those other products, let us know, and then we can arrange the disconnection at a date and time that works for you before our shutdown.
Okay.
Yep.
Second question is, you say this is the first rollout in Ashburton. When will the rest of the Ashburton district be done?
Sorry. We didn't quite catch that, sorry.
Sorry, I'll repeat. This is the first rollout you're doing in Ashburton. When will the rest of the district be done?
Okay. The rest of the border district?
Beyond
Ashburton?
Do you mean beyond Ashburton, or?
If I can just clarify, Ashburton is a town but is also a district. Yeah. So the question relates to other parts of the Ashburton district.
Right.
Okay, so at the moment we're prioritising areas where we've got a good set of options, so where the majority of customers have a choice between wireless and fibre is where we move them to. So we're looking quite closely at all of the different areas. We will get to other areas where we have options to provide customers. So at this point, there may not be, if the majority of the customers, for example, or a high number, we can't offer them fibre or we can't offer them wireless, we'll deprioritise that area until there's some way of solutioning for them. Because the aim is we ensure that customers have got appropriate service at the end of this.
Great.
So sorry, that means don't have a date at this point, and we're working through dates for the whole country at the moment, as say prioritising the areas we can help best.
And you'll update us as time goes on as to when you're going to shut other areas down, as you've done this time.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. Councillor Cameron?
Thank you for your presentation. My question relates to the choice surrounding wireless or fibre. How do people make that decision? Is it based on whether there's a cell tower locally or whether there's, how's that?
Yeah, so, yeah, how does that happen? So we've been going, as Janet mentioned, we're going to areas where we believe people have that choice, so there's fibre and wireless available. We make a recommendation based on their usage. For example, if they're a very low data user with maybe 1 or 2 people in the household, wireless would work really well for them. There's a price differential between them at times. If they've got lots of people in the house, they need a super fast connection, then fibre is going to be better for them. But we recommend one, but they can choose either of them. And we explain to them, this is the plan that you would go on. This is how much it would cost. This is the detail behind it. People often choose wireless because they prefer the convenience. To set up on wireless, all we do is send you a modem and you turn it on. It's that simple. You get a modem for free, 2 landline phones, and you just plug them in and turn them on. If you opt for fibre, then we need to get that installed and connected through Chorus. So it really comes down to customer preference.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson?
Yes. Good afternoon. It must be, is it Chorus that actually puts the fibre in? Because a lot of areas in our district that haven't got fibre but would like fibre. Do you have any influence on where Chorus actually puts their fibre?
No, you're correct. It's so the fibre network is owned and operated by Chorus. So we, as the I guess retail provider, can then sell it once it goes to an area. So in terms of where or when fibre is rolled out, it's definitely a question for Chorus. But we've been trying to focus this activity around areas that do have fibre and wireless, so that we can move people to their choice of technology.
Thank you. Councillor Lovett?
I was just going to ask, we have a lot of fibre that is gone around the district through Electricity Ashburton, connecting up all the substations. I've actually paid to get it into the house at home. Are you going to be working with that company, or is Chorus going to, you don't know if they're going to lay fibre around the same district where we've already got it? Because it has been a concern of a lot of people doubling up.
Oh, okay. So did you say electricity companies investing in?
Electricity Ashburton's had it around the district for many years, connecting up substations in the rural schools.
Right, okay.
So we already have it out there.
I think they're a competitor of yours.
They will be a competitor, but they had it early on. So it would be nice to see that, working with them. Yeah.
I think I used the word competitor. So
No, we haven't done anything with that. Anything to do with the fibre rollout is really a question for Chorus, because we don't have control over that. The PSTN is just specifically the switch network.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Cameron?
Just a quick question. Are people then contracted into a particular fibre or wireless, or can they switch willy-nilly between them as their circumstances change?
Yeah, yes they can. Because we're doing this change, we're not pushing people into contracts, so they can make a change if the person decides.
Uh-oh. We may have lost you. We're still there. We've frozen the screen. You might be still there. Try again now.
We can hear you okay?
Yeah. Oh, you just dropped out there for about 10 seconds.
Okay.
So, Janet, if you want to start again, what you were about to say. What you did say, but we never heard.
Oh, sure. Oh, is it?
Yeah. Was that at our end or?
No.
It must have been about the contracts, yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. There you go. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, we're not putting customers onto contracts since this is a Spark-led change. So they're welcome to change if they change technology if they want to from say wireless to fibre or vice versa.
Thank you. Angus, Councillor Mackay.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Two follow-up questions. One from my follow-up from my esteemed colleague on my right, Councillor Falloon. If one does away with their landline and just has the cell phone to the tower, how do other people know their phone number, or is that directory system going to disappear?
You're talking about the white pages?
Yep. At the moment I get the white pages because Councillor Falloon next door to me has a telephone number and a landline into his house. If he just goes to cell phone, will his number appear in the next white pages directory?
No. I mean, yeah, mobile numbers don't appear in those directories. If someone does switch and keep a landline, then they can keep their phone number, their existing phone number.
Yeah, but if you disconnect it, the phone number goes.
Yeah.
Thank you. The other one is, if you knew of fibre, as Spark, if you knew of fibre that had been laid by an electricity company, would you be interested in using it, or are you only interested in using Chorus's line? I asked the question because we had cable put down the main street of Ashburton, and then a couple of years later Chorus come and put it down alongside. So that's why I'm asking the question. How many trenches are we going to have around the district? Around the suburbs?
I believe with fibre, what fibre we can use depends what's been configured to our network. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's quite a significant project required to configure different fibre companies onto our network. They're really high level.
Yeah. So that's probably why you find that providers like us tend to work with the likes of Chorus or other major LFCs in the region to justify the expense of connecting into that fibre network.
One additional question, if I may, Mr Mayor. Yep. Does that mean that we're likely to see Chorus trenches now dug around the district alongside the electricity Ashburton cable trenches?
I don't feel like we can speculate on what Chorus will do.
Okay, Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. I've just got a question on reaching out to your 1,060 customers. Seems like a lot. So you said you're using the local Spark shop here in Ashburton. Have you also thought about using our Citizens Advice Bureau, which has just opened up in Community House? And we've also got a new digital, what's the name of Rebecca's? Digital coordinator at the Ashburton Public Library, who might be a good person to contact as well, so you can sort of reach out to as many people as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd be happy to get in touch with them. What we do as we go around the country is keep some of the groups, like particularly age concern and groups who are set up to support seniors and also people with disabilities. We keep them informed because we often find that people will get in touch with them if they have concerns about these kinds of technology changes. So we'd be happy to also add those two groups you mentioned onto our list and let them know, so they've got the material they need to support customers as well.
Thank you.
Leila, I have your email address, so we will forward those contacts to you.
Yes, absolutely. I believe Aisling has your contact details now?
Yep.
Yep.
Well, it's on
our slide as well. Yep.
Even better and more reliable. Councillor Rawlinson.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. My question is around, I live in Tynwald, so I've got my landline with Spark, but Chorus put in the ultra-fast broadband. So with the new rollouts, what would change for people in my situation? Anything, if nothing?
So if you're already connected to fibre, you won't need to change your broadband. It would just be your landline. So then, if you've already
should already be Do you have fibre already?
Yes,
or are you saying that
Chorus
you do?
put ultra-fast broadband in where I live and the surrounding streets probably about 3 years ago.
Okay. And your landline, do you know if your landline's connected through fibre?
I don't know. No, I don't know.
It probably is, isn't it?
Yeah.
If your broadband's connected to fibre, most likely your landline.
Only thing that might not be is if you've got a separate line into your property. If you've got two phone numbers, it's possible that one of them is connected through the PSTN.
No.
So I guess in your situation, what we'd do is you would just get in touch with us. We'd look at your account. If your landline and broadband are already fibre, there's nothing you need to do. If the landline is copper, then we would most likely recommend you just switch it to fibre, just like your broadband, because that would make the most sense, I imagine.
It's questionable whether you even need it.
Oh, okay.
Depends what the landline's being used for.
Just a
But
domestic
if you were
landline.
affected by this, you will have received a letter from us. So if you haven't,
Yes.
then you're fine.
Yes, that's
Must
a
be
very good
fine.
point. If you haven't heard from us, then you're all good. Yeah.
Good thing. And just a comment, I've heard people say, oh, Spark rang us up recently, but because there's been so many, and you'll be aware of this, the spam calls saying they're Spark
Yes.
and they're going to cut the phone off. I've had people say, oh, we won't talk to them. So I guess you've met
I
that
know.
reaction.
This is a big challenge that we have because of scammers using Spark's brand to implement scams. When we try to proactively get in touch with customers, either about something like this or an actual scam, they don't know whether to trust us or not, to know whether it's us. So we're looking at a lot of our communications and how we can authenticate ourselves to customers, because that is quite a big challenge.
Great, thank you.
So if people have had a phone call from Spark and they're not sure if it's Spark or not, is there a number that they can ring you back on? And if there is, what is that number?
So I think it was in the one of the final slides of the pack, which we can make sure you all have a copy of. But we have a specialist care team with an 0800 number, so they can speak to them and know that they're speaking to the right people.
Okay.
Otherwise, and generally, if you get a phone call from Spark, you hang up and you can just call us back on 123 to confirm whether the call was legitimate or not.
123, great. Councillor Wilson.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. My question is, in the past, you couldn't retain your same phone number if you shifted from one area of our district to another. You can retain it now if you change from copper to fibre or to wireless. You can keep your number just about anywhere within the district. Same phone number.
If you move house?
I think the rules around if you move house doesn't change, so it's probably okay. I would have thought anywhere in Ashburton. Definitely, if you're just changing technology at the same address, your phone number doesn't have to change. So if you were making a change from your copper-based landline to either wireless or fibre at the same address, you keep your same phone number. The rules around areas are no different. They don't, but they're still the same.
Thank you. Councillor Mackay.
The areas outside the town of Ashburton, that most of them are still reliant on a buried copper pipe, how long will it be before they have fibre connected to
How long
Spark?
until they get fibre?
And until they're connected to Spark fibre.
So that's part of the
Or are they going to be forced to cell phone tower?
Are they going to be forced what, sorry?
Are they going to be forced to the cell phone tower?
Oh, onto the cell tower. So at the moment, we're only rolling out this project to areas where we can offer people wireless and fibre as an option. We will get to a point where we have to go to areas and retire the PSTN where, for example, fibre isn't available. We're intentionally going to the areas where it is first because it's much easier for people to make that change, and we're actively looking at what other alternatives there are in those areas, but it's something that we're still investigating, so we can update you once we understand what that looks like.
Thank you for that. There's no more questions here, so thank you, Sam, Leila and Janet, for tuning in today and giving us that information. If you sent that
No worries.
info through to Aisling, that will be great. And yeah, thanks very much for keeping us informed.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Hit the end button. Okay, councillors, the next item on the agenda is item number 5, which is the receipt of the minutes of the Methven Community Board. So I'd like to move that we receive these minutes. Councillor Cameron, Councillor Lovett, all in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Next is the Road Safety Coordinating Committee. We need to receive these minutes. Someone like to move and second?
Yeah, that's my
Councillor Lovett, Councillor Falloon. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Item number 7, Airport Authority Subcommittee. Council, someone like to move that we receive these minutes. The meeting held on the 10th of May. Councillor Brown, Councillor Latham. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. And we have a recommendation there. And that recommendation is that council requires that the full market rates be applied to all new leases at the Ashburton Airport. Councillor Mackay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Falloon.
Moving.
Second to Councillor Brown.
Correct.
Any discussion? No discussion. I'll put the motion in favour. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Item number 8. Reports. Street plaques to highlight history of Ashburton. And we have Steve with us. Yep. Is there anything further you'd like to add to your report there, Steve, or would you like questions, or how would you like to handle?
Good morning, Mayor Neil and Council. The report, I think it was to outline a pre-scoping of the of an interested report that came to you, or comment that came to you as part of that subcommittee of council in 2020. And what we've looked at is potentially investigate what's happening out there now, especially with those 2 community groups, and have come up with some options for you to consider. But there may be other options that are also in council's mind. So we're sort of just indicating back to council to give us some directions whether or not you're keen to proceed with the history of, or promotion of the history of Ashburton into the town centre, and if you are, which option would sit more comfortably with you. From that, we could then go and do some more scoping and more analysis and on that option that is preferred by you.
Great. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Steve. This is an excellent report and one I'm very excited about. I also am very happy to see that the Ashburton Museum and Historical Society are happy to work with the Historic Places Mid-Canterbury. It's quite nice to see that they can see the vision for it and happy to work together on that. I personally, if it's time to talk about it, I would prefer option 3. I think it's important that the council are also involved, and I wouldn't like to totally hand off the whole responsibility and decision making to the 2 particular groups. That's just the position I hold, but I certainly support the need to progress this project, and it seems timely and fits in well with the new civic building and with the new streetscape in town. So I think it'd be a wonderful addition to our new streetscape.
Councillor Ornison.
Thank you, and Carolyn's taken the words out of my mouth really, and I did have a question around the cost, although I see at this stage there's no contribution sought. But I guess going forward there'll be some minimal costs to create a wee working party.
Through the chair, Historic Places Mid-Canterbury have indicated they actually don't need any funding from council for their project, so they're moving ahead with identifying those historic buildings. The early conversation with Ashburton Museum and Historical Society, they've said that they have some funding towards it, but until it's fully scoped up, they're unaware of what the costs are going to be. So that would be where that working party would work through some of that and look at potential funding options for them.
Thank you. And I just think it's great to see ADC and the other two groups all pulling together to work together, because that's what it's about. Thanks.
Great. Any further questions of Steve? Councillor Falloon?
I certainly agree with what Carolyn and Diane have both said, and I also support option 3. I just wonder, do we need to maybe have an outsider on that committee? And the person I'm thinking about is the ratepayer who initially brought this to our attention.
Steve, any comment there? I don't know who the ratepayer is, but...
I do. I do, but...
That's you. Lynette, great.
I do
Carol?
know who the ratepayer is. It was Mr. Stewart.
Right.
Yeah. And that's who had the photographs and all the rest of it. Yeah.
Steve, do you think it's appropriate to have Mr. Stewart on there as well?
We haven't asked him.
If he wants to.
Through the chair, that's fine. It would end up being those two historical societies, myself, or some representation from the museum, and more than happy to have someone from the public. So.
Yep. Councillor Cameron? No? Love it.
I think it's a great idea, but will council have some input on the sizing and where they're going to go, whether it's inside a building or on the street or whatever? Because I'd hate to see it all sort of come and land on us and we're told what's happening, where it's going to go. We just got a little bit be careful going down that path.
Just through the chair for that question, there are a number of steps that council will have to be involved in, such as signing off where they are to go because of the East Street green belt. So it's something that we could report back through our activity updates, or if there's specific permission through Jane's team, we may have to report back anyway, but no, we can do that along the way.
So it looks as though councillors have a wish for option 3, which is facilitate a working party. Did you want, or do you need some councillors on that working party as well?
Again, through you, Mr. Chair, look, more than happy to have whoever from council would like to be on the party.
Yep. Councillor Rawlinson?
I was going to move the recommendation, if I may.
Okay, you with option 3?
With the recommendation that we provide direction on whether we proceed with supporting the promotion of the history of Ashburton, and that recommendation 3 be the chosen option. And can I also recommend that we approach David Stewart as a independent member of the group? Is that in order?
Yes, I just wondered whether you just simply want to move option 3, that Council, Historic Places Mid Canterbury and Ashburton Museum and Historical Society work together, yes. And then in a separate clause, perhaps, or a separate resolution, deal with your working group members.
Yeah.
Happy to do that. Let you phrase it.
And council member.
That'll be number 3.
Option 3 be the
option 3. Some names. Mr. Stewart.
Well, could I put forward that we ask David Stewart if he would be interested in being party to this, alongside Historic Places Mid Canterbury and someone from the Museum and Historical Society?
You've already got them. And, yeah. Number 3, and some councillors.
Yes. Yeah.
2.
One or two? Mm.
2. Which councillors would like to? Councillor Cameron?
I'd be interested.
Councillor Rawlinson? Adding those 2 on. So you've got the bones of it there, Philippa. Great. Who moved? You moved it, Diane. Was seconded it?
Carolyn.
Carolyn seconded.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you want to speak to the motion, Diane?
I think we've said it all before, but I think it's been a long time coming to get something together like this, and it's a natural flow on from the Historical Society with their blue plaques, and I'm sure that we need to acknowledge our history. A lot of our history has been removed or taken down post-earthquake, and I think we need to recognise a lot of it before it's gone. That's all I wish to say.
Councillor Falloon, speaking to the motion.
I do support the motion. I just wonder whether Councillor Rawlinson has a conflict of interest with her sister being chair of the Historical Society or whatever it is.
Councillor Rawlinson could decide if she has a conflict or not, but We'll let her make that decision if she thinks she is.
I don't believe I do. My sister and I don't even talk about these matters, although I must say I've been on some of their historic places bus trips, but it's not something I'm involved in their group as such.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers for or against the motion? If not, I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Next, item number 9. Dog control fees and charges for the 1st of June to the 1st of July to the 30th of June this year and part of next. Welcome, Rick. Jane. Looks reasonably straightforward. It's been through the LTP process. This is formalising it to get it in order before the 1st of July and letting people know, obviously, beforehand. Councillor Mackay.
I move the recommendation because it has been through the LTP process.
Lane. Sorry, carry on.
Thus, the constituents of this district who we work for have had a chance to have input into it, and we have heard that input. So I so move.
And seconded by Councillor Brown. Any further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Item number 10, Section 17A, Review of Forestry. Welcome, Terry and Paul. I think reasonably in-depth report there, Terry, which is good. Very self-explanatory and in-depth. Councillors, any questions of Terry before we move into putting the motion? Obviously, there's some options there. Very in-depth report. Must have been really in-depth. Councillor Lovett.
I was going to say it was great reading the history and everything throughout, where it all, right from the start. The health and safety part of this, is there staff doing that, or is that all completely contracted out, or they have input into it when you are working in the forests at the moment?
Is it? Through you, Mr. Chairman. Currently, our health and safety is it's a bit of a mixture. We have we try and fulfil our needs for health and safety by inducting our contractors and doing safety checks, but we also through our harvesting arrangements employ part of our sales is actually they also undertake health and safety requirements, so we're covering ourselves, especially in the harvesting, which is where the greatest risk lies. So we're in effect we're it's sort of outsourcing to some degree of what we're doing. What it doesn't do in the health and safety, you can't contract your way out of being a PCBU. So yeah, we still have responsibilities as the owner of the forests. Yeah.
Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In paragraph 3 there, you refer to Riverbank View joint venture. What was the Riverbank View joint venture?
Yep. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's a historic forestry arrangement that we had with what dates back to 1985. I think it was planted. So the then county joined with a landowner and planted up a reasonably substantial forest, about 150 hectares, and that was a part of our estate for some time, and we made a decision once that was harvested that we wouldn't re-enter into a joint venture arrangement. When we have a joint venture, the council becomes liable for taxation. So we lose that advantage that we have in our in-house operations. So
whereabouts was it?
It was up in the Rakai Gorge. It was,
Okay, thank you. Yep.
And you know, the arrangement ended quite well. I think we got some good income out of it. One thing I haven't done is actually gone right through and checked to see how historically it performed. But that was something we were saddled with when the district council started. So,
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Terry, reading through it, you seem to do quite a bit of work as well, external for other districts. So how much of your time can you sell outside the council?
Yeah, through you again, Mr. Chairman, the council's been contracting work to other councils prior to even my arrival to the position. So it's something that the council's been involved historically. It varies the quantity of work that we do. At the moment, as you know, we have probably less work maybe than what I'd normally do. I can tend to do more work with those parties. Our major contractors with Mackenzie. They've got a reasonably substantial resource, about 1,000 hectares. And actually a big part of what they do is they've got over 500 hectares that's registered in the ETS. So they've got, there's some, a lot of decisions to be made regarding how that's managed, and so that does take up a fair bit of time. The rates that we charge on it probably could, we're trying to get those rates to more realistic levels. In the past, we've sort of tended to do it on a more of a, I don't know, friendly sort of rates, but but anyway, it still does provide good income to offset what my time basically. So
Councillor Flood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for an excellent report. I thought it was very well written, and the options you've laid out to us are very simple to understand. And there's some interesting options which I think we need to look at further. Question I have is, basically in one part of the report it says we've got 1,098 hectares, and in another part of the report it says we've got 1,350. Is the difference the areas that we're managing and who owns those parts that we're managing?
Through you again, Mr. Chairman. The areas of forest, there's two distinct areas. It's probably I didn't maybe explain in the report well enough, but the larger area would be what we call the potentially plantable area. The other area is what we call the net stocked area, so that's what we recognise as the actual quantity of crop on the ground. So part of that will be things like tracks and things that can't be planted, but there's also, in all forests you tend to get stocking gaps and so forth. So the idea of giving the total area is just to give an idea of the total scale that's there.
Councillor Rawlinson.
Thank you, and again, thanks for a great report. It was easily readable, digestible. My question is just the recommendation that you continue to deliver in-house in the short to medium term. Do you have any idea how many years you'd put on short, medium term?
Do you want to answer that?
Through Mr. Mayor, it really depends on if recommendation 3 is passed, what comes out of recommendation 3. Because this Section 17A is only looking at the efficiency of how we deliver what we're delivering at the moment, and if there is a change or in the strategic approach to forestry, that could well change in the medium to long term the recommendation of number 2. So if it stays the way it is at the moment, it's likely that in the short to medium term we will continue in-house. If it changes significantly as a result of number 3, then we'll be looking at it again.
Okay. Just a question for you, Terry, on the in-house option. it's got the costing of $89,700 a year. Does that include overheads?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the expression of that overhead was calculated by taking out overheads such as the corporate overhead, such as governance and so forth. So they're only direct overheads related to the forestry operation, and less that income coming from our work with other councils and private forestry.
And on page 11 of the report, or our page 36, and there's a table there, and forecasting forward, the forestry size is dropping by 100 hectares a year. Are we planning on selling that or not doing forestry? What's the thought behind that?
That was basically just a prediction done on what at the freehold forestry land that the council still has. We made that decision back when the EY report was completed, that we were trying to sell down on our freehold land. But what I've tried to express there is actually the land that's reasonably saleable. There is some land that is going to be difficult to sell because it's tied up with Glasgow leases and so forth. So it's a bit of a stab in the dark at what may happen. And what I've tried to express is that if that doesn't go ahead as well, that obviously has an impact on that overhead. It's not as negative.
And the Ernst Young report was done probably 4 years ago, was it, or more?
Yeah, even it would have been about 7 or 8 years ago.
Oh, was it? Yeah. And a lot has changed since then in the emissions type greenhouse gases, carbon, etc. So option number 3, I think, or not, item number 3 here in the recommendation is probably very good to have another strategic look at it. Yeah. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Terry, on page 32, there's a map of our forest estates. Why is there no planting done north of the Ashburton? Is there no land available, or it seems it's all between the Hines, Orangatata and the Ashburton?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the positioning of our plantations really relates to where the council's had forestry in the past. So there's when you look at some of the areas, there's generally forestry in mid Canterbury grows better as you get closer to the foothills. It's rainfall related. So that partly explains that there's not a heck of a lot of forestry. Well, we've had some areas of forestry between the coast and Highway 71, State Highway 1, but very little. And then there's just the value of land as well. You head to Bar Hill and the high value soils there. It's pretty hard to have forestry in those sort of areas. But but it really is. It does come back to what the council has adopted from its forebears, really. Yeah.
Good. Recommendation here, councillors. So I'm prepared to take all 3 parts of one. Someone like to move? Councillor Falloon. Councillor McMillan.
I'll second.
Seconded. Any further debate? If not, I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Terry. Next item, the financial variance report. Paul, is that you again? Councillor, if you find that on your tablets, I'll give you a minute. Just let us know when you've got it. She'll go through it page by page. Page number 3. 4. 5. Just have a question on number. Oh, Councillor Falloon, you take it.
Yeah, just coming back to page 4, I note that subsidies and grants are well over forecast. by about 30-odd%, and the same with development contributions. The development contributions, is that partly to do with our consents being up and that sort of thing, or what?
Through Mr Mayor, yes, that's correct. I'll look into that and come back to you on that one.
There'll be the relief sewer money we got for...
Yes, Mayor, that's absolutely correct.
Page number 6, roading is 8.8 favourable, which means the money's not spent. The comment there relates to 1.7 million of it. So what about the other 7 million of not being spent? Will it be spent by year end?
We can clarify that, but my conversations with the Group Manager of Infrastructure Services suggested to me that it is really only the CBD work that is tangled up in the timing, and the balance of our roading program is on track for the financial year.
Okay, and it's talks about 1.78 million of CBD work, if I'm reading it correctly.
Well, that's a large component of it. I'm not saying that it's exactly that number, but the bulk of the roading program is on track, other than that amount.
Right. It may correct itself next report. Thank you. Page 7. Page 8. Welcome, Rachel. Page 9. 10. 11. 12. 13. 14. 15. 16. 17. 18. 19. 20. Stuart?
Yes, page 17. You're going that fast.
I thought it was going slow.
Capital expenditure on commercial property. We've only spent a third of it. What?
Through Mr Mayor, some of that capital expenditure reflects that when we did this original budget, which was probably 18 months ago, the timetable for the new library and civic centre project was completely different to what it is now.
Yeah.
So that's largely the reason for that variance.
Okay, 19. 20. 21. 22. Stuart?
Yes, 21. You've got district water management, our surface water strategy under the zone committee. I thought the zone committee was a different entity. It's a cooperation between ECAN and the district and independent people, whereas the district surface water strategy, is it not funded completely different to the zone committee?
Yeah, if I may, so the district water management was the old name for that budget area, and that has always funded the zone committee costs.
Oh, I see.
22. 23. 24. 25. Just on that loan repayments, Paul, I think we've heard it before, but the actual is 35 million, yet you forecast 4, but you've gone internal, external. Is the reason?
That's true, and also often we, in the budget, net off when a loan comes due for repayment. We don't record it as an income item to uplift it, so there's quite often a mismatch in the budget versus reporting. But it'll be mainly the swap of internals to externals.
26.
Perhaps through you, Mr. Mayor, can I just comment on the plant replacement? We are running into issues now with plant replacement. You'll see it's below budget. We are now running the same difficulty as most people are in getting plant. And I'll give you an example that Toyota have advised on their website that if you want a RAV4 of any description, you'll be waiting at least 6 months. And that's now not uncommon amongst all vehicle makers. So our plant replacement is not going to be per the timetable. We stand in line with everybody else now. So we'll just have to wait till we can get the various plant items.
Because of your plant replacement policy, the equipment is still very usable.
That's correct, through Mr. Mayor, but some of them are slipping out of our agreed replacement time. Yeah. And although they are generally of a high safety rating, because we do consider safety rating when we buy especially motor vehicles, they are starting to get where they should be replaced simply because of their age, and they're going to have to wait till we can get the vehicles. But they're still perfectly usable and serviceable.
Yeah. You can do nothing else. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. My question is same category. Have Parks and Open Spaces decided on their larger mowers and things at this stage?
Steve?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just to update council, we're currently going out for open tender for the new tractor. We're just finalising the two front deck mowers, and we're just finalising the last of the prices for the trailed mower behind the tractor. So we're on target. Yeah.
And those pieces of plant are available?
That's one of the requirements we've got as part of that tender process. We're hoping to have that tractor available by the end of this financial year. The other pieces of equipment are fine, yeah, at this stage. But it is very, very tight out there for things we've normally experienced a 1 month turnaround, or if not out of stock. So.
Yep. Councillor Floon?
Yeah, just looking at page 26, I note our work in progress is now at $41.5 million, up about 28 mil. I presume this is because all of the CBD upgrade, the relief sewer, and all of that has gone into there before it's allocated out to individual asset items.
Through the Chair, that's correct. It's also the way we do our capitalisations within council. Everything goes into the work in progress account and we capitalise at year end. So that's going to look bigger and bigger and bigger over the year until the end of the year.
Page 27. I suppose you'll be glad those two fixed rates have now come off. 28. 29. 30. Councillor Falloon.
Yeah, our idea of borrowing externally and then investing internally seems to be paying off quite well at the moment, particularly when we're getting 4.10 and 4.25 on $2 million. That's very good investing.
You won't have just taken them lately though, will you?
Okay.
And page 30. Nothing, no further questions there, councillors. Our next item is number 12. Thanks, Paul and Rachel. Mayor's report, page 57, 58 on mine. 58. 58, got it. Councillor Flynn.
Do we have to move a motion that the variance report be received or not?
Have one if you want, but, no. Correct. Like to move?
Yes.
Second. Councillor Lovett, all in favour, please say aye. Thank you for that. Now, item number 12, the Mayor's report. Questions? They're getting shorter because we're meeting every 2 weeks. The other thing is that I need to be doing it the next day for the next council meeting, as you do too for your reports you put in. Councillor Wilson?
Yes, the 5th of May, what was the panel with Wallace Chapman interview involved in, Mr. Mayor?
Whatever it takes. There was about 4 radio stations that rang over that day or previous couple of days. On the, we got publicity right around New Zealand or the world, I suppose. And Councillor Cameron held her own on the AM show because they couldn't get hold of me that evening, but they got hold of her and she agreed to do it. Well done, Councillor Cameron. You come across very well.
Could I just say, Mr. Mayor, I heard your interview on the radio and I thought you did very well too, because he was really poking you, was really trying to get a headline somewhere, so I think thought you handled it exceptionally well.
Thank you. Councillor Mackay?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The bottom item, 17th of May, draft regional land transport plan and hearing and deliberations. Is there anything of significant from the committee for this district?
Nothing significant. The plan is still the plan, which does have the second bridge in year 26. It's always been sitting there. Now that plan will be confirmed when it goes to the Environment Canterbury Council meeting, then that heads off to the National Land Transport Plan to see if we get the monies that are put in that plan going forward for Canterbury. It's a long-winded process, as you would know.
The other question, Mr. Mayor, if I may, is a 4-lane highway into the hinterland of the South Island.
It was in our submission. Wasn't talked about a lot, but it was discussed. I think the needs to come from here and feed up. So we're thinking about a process of how we feed that up, and we have Ian Duncan from Wakakatahi coming to speak to us soon, and we could ask him upon the approach we go forward with. Maybe the best way, but we won't let it lie. Thank you. Any further questions or a mover? I'll move the report. We receive it.
I'll second it.
Councillor Wilson. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. Councillor reports, none for this meeting. 2:30 we have Canterbury District Health Board Representative Bernie Mara coming in, and she's going with a couple of others, and it's going to talk to us about the rollout of the COVID vaccination program. We're at 2:10 now and finished our business of open meeting. I think it's important that the media stay for the presentation from Bernie Mara. Oh, she's out there. Oh, well. There's there's 2 others joining and perhaps one on a Zoom. Welcome, Bernie. Have they here yet or not? Because we're 20 minutes ahead of time.
Yes, well, I'm a little bit Nigel no friends, I have to admit, at the moment. So I've just been texting them all quickly going, where are you? They're on their way.
That's right. We might just adjourn for 10 minutes or so and then reconvene
It would be fantastic. I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
no, that's good. We're running early. It's not your fault at all. It's us.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Was looking a little panicked. Thank
That's
you.
all right. And you have someone zooming in as well?
I'm just checking whether they still can come into that
Okay,
time.
Good. So we'll take 10 minutes recess. Thanks. Adjourn. Welcome back, councillors. We'll reconvene the meeting, and we have from the Canterbury District Health Board, Bernie Mara. Welcome, Bernie. Also attending, we have Rachel Eaton from Life Pharmacy. Welcome, Rachel. And Tony Den from Eastfields Health. Welcome. So you're going to talk to us about the COVID vaccine rollout, and how it's going to happen, and what's going to happen. So I'm sure there'll be questions from councillors. Have you got someone zooming in? Did that happen or not?
We've opened up the Zoom link, and if Baden Hewitt joins us, he is the incident controller at the moment, but I'll talk a little bit more to that in 1 second.
Okay, great.
And if he joins in, we'll
take him on.
Take him.
Okay, that's good. Have you got vaccine today? Because Councillor McMillan's willing to have the jab live if you have.
Not at this moment, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Thank you so much, Mayor and councillors, for inviting us and enabling us to come and give you a bit of an update today. I wanted to take the opportunity to, I guess, give some highlights to what we've actually undertaken to date. There'll be some parts of, and I'm sure there'll be questions you raise with me today that I don't have all the answers to, but what we want to be able to do is, I guess, give a sense of presence of how we've got Ashburton in the system, and how the people that you're looking at the moment, we're very much connected to how the program is working and how we stand the process today. So to give you a high-level overview, the Canterbury District Health Board has set up what they call an emergency response system to plan out the vaccine rollout. So for those of you who are familiar with James and his team, when we stand up a ECC, or an emergency control situation, then we have localised areas that pick up their emergency operation response. What was different about our area in Ashburton and to the other parts of Canterbury is for both the centralised Christchurch area and focusing on staff vaccination, they were focusing on hospital staff vaccination and primary care vaccination separately. We, of course, being Ashburton, thought we've got a better idea. I didn't have enough registered vaccinators within my DHB employee staff at the hospital, and I knew my primary care colleagues had vaccinator staff that are very competent and equipped. And so Tony and I got together and we put up a proposal to how we could vaccinate all of the primary care employees and the DHB employees at the same time. This is part of the 2A and 2B categories. You'll see them well talked about throughout the system. That is vaccinating the healthcare, the frontline workers first. So there was the MIQ workers, the the family members and contacts of the MIQ workers, then rolling out to frontline healthcare. At the same time, when we were going through that process, there are, of course, the frontline healthcare workers that are outside of our business of inside the direct hospital or inside direct primary care. And that's where my colleague here, Rachel, steps in from Community Life Pharmacy. So after some intensive planning over a couple of days, what we managed to do is, in a very short period of time, is stand up a clinic at Ashburton Hospital, and we rostered in nurses from the various primary care providers through the support of Tony and his team, organising with the other primary care providers, the clinics running, and around the same time, Rachel and the Life Pharmacy set up. What we wanted to do, and the principles behind that, is we knew that the big vaccine rollout, the 3s and 4s, and that will be what's top of your mind coming through, we wanted to create a confidence interval with all of our frontline clinical areas about how that vaccine works and the rollout. When we talk about primary care is very confident at vaccinating all the time, they certainly are, and I'm sure, and so our pharmacy, you know, this is their bread and butter. The challenge in this process, and my colleagues will step in and support in any conversation, is the management of the vaccine. It's not the actual injection. That's the small part in the process. The vaccine has a very controlled approach to its movement. In some parts, it's moved with security companies only. It's got very strong processes and protocols around the movement of the vaccine. The licensing of the pharmacy that receipts the vaccine is very complex. We were licensed as a wholesale pharmacy in the hospital pharmacy, which means we could actually receipt the vaccine in. The movement within the hospital of the vaccine has a whole lot of protocols around it. The timelines, we take the vaccine out, we have to have the vaccine, and you can step in if I get this wrong. The vaccine has to be out at room temperature, that takes 30 minutes. Then they draw up the vaccine, there's only so many vaccines per vial. Then we have 6 hours to use all those vaccines. They have to be used within 6 hours. They cannot go back to the fridge, they cannot go back into any stock system. We cannot repackage the vaccines that arrive. So as they arrive in, they come in batches of 9. I don't know why 9, but 9. They come in batches of 9. We can't use one and repackage the rest. We would have to do a very strong production plan, which was how many people we were getting in at any given time to ensure that we didn't have any vaccine left at the end of the day. And then, as we would have, and we'll talk through a bit more about the booking process that happens, we controlled within the hospital and the primary care team a bit of a manual system because we were still early in their process, but it's now a national booking system. So that's where some of the complications come in for the next phase. I guess before I hand on to my colleagues, I'd just like to really congratulate the health workforce of Ashburton for working alongside each other and getting things done. It's a true spirit of Ashburton, isn't it? It's like, what's the challenge? How can we do it? Let's get it done. Tony and his team, and he was a great advocate to all of our practices and all of the practice nurses that came in and rostered in. We would have in our upstairs room for AHACA, you arrived, you had to be administered through a system called CIR. We'll go through the technical details if you need to know. You then move into a vaccine area. We'd have a primary care nurse and a hospital nurse working side by side. That creates great relationships. That's how people work together really well. They could ask questions of each other. Then, after you've been vaccinated, you must go and wait for 20 minutes in an observation area. The CIR, the database system, as we load the vaccine, it's loaded into CIR by the nurse who's just provided the vaccine, and then it's timed. And there's an automatic release, and you get an alert as the administrator to say, Carolyn, you can go now, you've waited 20 minutes. A bigger challenge is they wouldn't leave. We had people from across our community sitting together, appropriately spaced, but actually getting to talk to each other. They don't get to do that all the time. So that was fantastic. So they really enjoyed that process. Over a period of 8 days, 8 work days, so we worked only during the day because we also had to meet all our obligations about keeping our staff wellbeing safe. We couldn't roster nursing staff that would be extended over their working day period. So it's quite a lot of work that goes into the background. We vaccinated 520 people and we didn't waste one, and that was the hospital and primary care. So we feel big ups to that. And I'm going to hand over to Rachel to talk through about how we're going on the community side of things. I think, was there anything else you wanted to add, Tony?
No, I think that was good.
You get nothing else?
No, I don't have anything to add.
Rachel, do you want to?
Thank you for having me also. So the pharmacy model is a lot smaller scale than the hospital venture, and we work closely with a team of people through
Canterbury District Health Board, CDHB.
The CDHB, and they sort of guided us to how we would best roll it out in our pharmacy, because it's kind of, it is the only pharmacy in New Zealand so far that is actually giving the COVID vaccination within the pharmacy. We were lucky that Life Pharmacy Barrington, they were also one of the unique smaller clinics, but they have their clinic next door to their pharmacy, so it's not actually within the pharmacy itself. So, like Bernie has said, we had the appropriate premises because we put an expression of interest explaining how we would manage the vaccine program, that we had enough vaccinators, and that we felt confident that we could help out. And so we were approached by the team to say, yes, we'd like to participate. So as Bernie said, it's been really great working alongside these guys, because it truly has been interactive and integrative, and it's been building relationships that are going to be really good for the community going forward, because, you know, we never know what's going to happen, and if now that we all have built these relationships, it's going to be easier to take things on board or new initiatives. The pharmacy model is having its struggle with the booking system probably because it's an 0800 number that is often hard to get answered. There's so much pressure on it. So we've been sort of circumnavigating that by having our administrators book the people in as they come in. Again, as Bernie says, just logistically, the challenge with the vaccine is that we too, even though our prerogative is the 2As and the 2Bs, which is all the healthcare workers, we are having this situation where we've got bookings free at the end of the day, and so then we have a contingency plan of how we can, utilise a list of people that we are trying to target older people, but sometimes it just doesn't work that way. And so in the situation where we can't fill the bookings, then we would contact these list of people and invite them into the pharmacy and we vaccinate them then.
Yeah. So that contingency plan, that's something that we have to build into anything that we're doing. I'm sure that you've been aware, if you've connected into any of the other areas and seen some of the media and some of the other spaces, that often is that challenge when people are running out. We've been very lucky here that we've been able to really narrow that contingency plan down, thinking of our frontline workers who aren't necessarily paid but work in the hospital. If you think of all our volunteers, we would consider them 2A and 2B, and I'm sure you would too. We've talked about the aged residential care staff as that's starting to roll through now. So these are, when we talk about the contingency plan, it is about really focusing to those areas. It will step up. We don't know all the details yet of how that's going to look. We will be ensuring that there are appropriate clinics and appropriate clinics that are more mobile, because that has its own, if you think about that vaccine challenge I've just talked about, when we start to talk about moving the vaccine and going into other spaces, that's just opening a whole new world of logistical delight. I think that as you navigate this, it's being comfortable with a little bit of information you don't have, but being prepared for the information you are going to get is probably our foundation piece. I think that I guess in closing in this process, or just giving you this update, it's that core confidence interval that we are well connected into the system, that we are able to be part of the daily briefing. I'm part of the daily briefing for the ECC at the moment. We've stepped out a little bit once we finished our business. I guess I was a little less focused about how Orchard Road and some of the other areas are going in Christchurch. Kaikoura is standing up its community vaccine, which will be the integrated primary health service, etc. That's on Thursday this week. So we're connected into other rural and remote areas. Nationally, I've been part of the National Work for Rural Hospitals, and they have put just this week, or just recently, into the ministry, a champion medical lead for rural areas. So certainly from the ministry perspective, they've got a context of sometimes it's tell us what you need to do, but it's not always going to run the same way it does in an urban centre. And I'm sure the urban centres have equally challenges. This week we were visited by the Ministry of Health representation for welfare. They came in to check with us to check on the welfare of the vaccinating staff and the team, because they're very conscious that the pressures these put on people. Now, one of, I guess, the emerging conversations around both the staff who at MIQ centres, but also the vaccination staff and the medical staff involved, is the sense of stress that is bringing onto the workforce involved. We take the work very seriously, that pressure of not wasting a vaccine, that pressure of getting this right. And it was great to see that the ministry are recognising that actually they were just going to have to take a lot of care of our people as we step through this. And I think we went really well in the meeting. I think we were also targeted as a smaller isolated area. They wanted to hear from what happens in a small community as well as what happens in a big centre. So, Mayor Brown, that's my briefing.
Thanks very much, Bernie. I'm sure the councillors have got some questions. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. Thanks for that update. So the only option for people living outside of town is to travel in to get their vaccinations. Is that correct?
So once they do the next phase of planning, it will be looking at what is the volume of clinics they need to have based on the demographic spread. So when you say outside of town, you're thinking Methven?
Rakaia, Hinds,
yep.
Mount Somers.
So that's part of the planning that's underway at the moment. So they'll look at the volume of people that are in those areas that need to be vaccinated. How do we best stand up a clinic that's flexible to them? The challenge for some people is they might live in that area, but they might not necessarily want to go to that space to get vaccinated, and that's why the 0800 booking system. And, we're really encouraging when that comes alive. People will be able to self-select the clinics. So when they ring that booking system, there'll be a list of clinics available that they can connect to, and they can say, I want to go to that clinic, and be booked into that clinic, not be told they have to go to a particular clinic.
Okay, so that I'm thinking of the elderly who, in some cases, can't drive or don't want to drive to Ashburton, that there's something available for them. So
that will be part of the planning, is to make sure, and that's part of the rural and remote planning, is to say not everybody is able to access. So what is our options in smaller communities? Now, it might not be clinics every day, it just might be a pop-up clinic for a short period of time to connect those people in.
That makes sense, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. My question, I've got two questions. First one is, I hear Minister Hipkins saying we're 4,500 vaccinators short. I know a relative of mine is a trained A&E nurse, before she had family sort of thing, and she's been turned down. Can they not be part of the team to relieve, if you have people under stress, former nurses that have been highly trained in their profession, and yet the government doesn't seem to want them?
I think, Stuart, there is room for anyone that has been a nurse who's retired or had some association with some kind of nursing medical background. If they go onto the IMAC website, there is, which is all the immunisation, there'll be bits about COVID there, there'll be about measles, mumps, anything you want to know about a vaccine. There's an area specific for people who want to become vaccinators again. So that's where they will be able to find out how to do that. It's just that then they will have to have a current first aid certificate, and there'll be some other wee measures that they have to do. But the more the merrier. The idea is that they do want to embrace any person that has the potential to come and help us.
Rachel, what was that website again?
IMAC.
IMAC.
Yeah, IMAC.
Okay.
It's not super easy to figure out for yourself what you need to do to get registered to be a vaccinator if your registration as a health professional has lapsed. So I think that there is scope for us to start that. What we should probably do as a region is pull together the list of people who would be interested in helping out.
Another question, Stuart?
Yes. Second question. All my age group is supposed to be vaccinated by the end of June. How are you going? Who decides where you start? I know sometimes the flu vaccine, because it's W. Wilson, it's right at the end of the queue. Isn't the
So,
does the government going to send the names out? Do you volunteer, or how does it actually work between now and the end of June?
So I think the end of June is with the highlighted levels. We also had some timeline delays across the country. That's not a Canterbury unique situation. So they're currently modelling up that next phase. It will be working with the primary care practices, and there'll be a lot of advertising once they get the dates confirmed of how we will be able to roll that out. And at that point in time, because we had to balance in with the flu vaccine, because there's a time period between you having your flu vaccine and then you being able to have your COVID vaccine. So from many of the primary care practices, we've ensured that we've rolled out the flu vaccine, so we've got the community covered for flu. which is a great thing. We needed that to happen as well, and they're now starting to plan up. And we haven't got the confirmed dates yet for the next phase, but as soon as we have them, we'll connect with the council and with all of our community to make sure that they're very aware of what's happening next and how to get into the system. But it will be through that booking system again, is how that they intend to utilise the ensuring people get through. It will also be part of the conversations that you have with your general practice team or your pharmacy teams, etc., about making sure that you know how to get into the system. So as soon as we have those dates, I'm sure you don't need to change the name to A for Arthur just to get on the list.
Councillor Flood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 questions. First one is, Ministry of Health have had 6 months to get all this in plan, and they've failed miserably. In other words, what you're telling us, we're still working out the procedures and protocols, i.e. red tape, to get these vaccines out to people. Is that due to poor planning or a lack of vaccinators, or when the timing of the vaccines will come into the country?
So I can't speak on behalf of the Ministry of Health, unfortunately, that is not in my scope. What I can say is there has been very active, and at the Ministry there are significantly stood up workforce that they've had to pull from all other roles across the DHB and health providers across New Zealand. A planning process of moving that vaccine. It was the supply coming into the country. It was also the supply and distribution and how they move it out. Whilst it might appear as red tape, I think it's more led with clinical cautiousness and making sure that we are keeping every component safe through that process. And not all the answers were available to the Ministry at the same time either. So whilst we can't go back on the 6 months, we can go forward and ensure that we're really well organised and pushing through the next phase for our community.
The last question is a technical question. This is the super cold deep freeze stuff. Mm-hmm. Do we have the facilities in Ashburton to store that for the vaccinators locally?
So the vaccine process, we don't need to have it frozen when it arrives here because of the way we can manage, and this goes back to the very complex, which I'm now more familiar with than I was before, licensing arrangement. So the vaccine, when it arrives here, we have 3 days. So we, production plan, for one of words in my world, so we forecast 6 weeks, 8 weeks in advance how many vaccines we'll need because we're ordering through the major systems nationally. We need to get them in. We're part of the ordering system for Canterbury District Health Board, who are ordering, of course, for across their community. So they land. We know, I guess, to go into detail, we would be triple checking by Thursday what we need in that fridge for Monday morning. That order's gone up Thursday afternoon. Each day we reconfirm and update how many we plan to vaccinate, how many we vaccinated, what's our scheduling system for the next 3 days. So we're pushing data backwards and forwards all the time. When it lands here, we have 3 days to use that vaccine, and it's from the 3 days. So we know, and we already have detailed plans before it's even arrived, what we'll do. So we don't need that freezer system locally, to come back to your question.
Councillor Cameron.
Rachel, you alluded to it earlier. The booking system is very lengthy, even at 2A and 2B, so presumably 3A and 4 is going to be worse. Have there been some changes implemented and key learnings from that so that people won't be hanging on for an hour and a half to get the telephone answered?
There are daily updates on who's working on that. I think that they, from the centre, also from our local areas, is pushing up to what information would help in those processes. I certainly know there's been opportunities for some areas where they can bulk book times for whole groups of people, but it's certainly being worked on. I can't give you the details, Councillor Cameron, but it's worked on consistently because they're very conscious that needs to run very smoothly.
Oh, you want to talk again? Cheap.
Carolyn?
what were we talking about? The booking system. So will they employ more, is there a plan to employ more, because clearly it's a staff shortage or a line shortage. I mean, what else can it be? The phones aren't being answered, so there's not people there or there's not enough lines. So that seems a simple solution, just employ more people to answer telephones. Or have an online booking system where you can go and, like you can for some medical centres, and book your appointment in real time would also be great. It doesn't seem to be that tricky a thing, I wouldn't have thought.
I understand the online booking system was trialled and it only worked for the CDHB, and you might remember that there was a privacy breach a while ago at the start of 2. So as a result, they've figured out that the app-based online booking system wasn't going to be appropriate to roll out to the community. I wouldn't be surprised, I'm not sure of this, if they were looking at trying to get that back up and running, having sorted out their bugs. So I would hope that would be the case. Yeah.
Councillor Bryan.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really impressed. Just a question what most people will have is, when does it start? And is it going through all the way? So we start on a Monday and we keep on going and keep on going and keep on going, or is it breaks? And can we start with a W so we can get rid of Stuart as well first?
So that will be part of the, we don't have the final details for that. I can't say what will happen, because we'll be running dual lists at the same time. You have your first vaccine and then we need to vaccine you later within 21 days, right?
Yeah.
Make sure that I've got 21 days. So when you have your first vaccine, we're booking you in that day as you're leaving after your 20 minutes for your next vaccine. So that will be part of, we're actually, how do we run through that double? What we know from a principal perspective is we will try and ensure that we've got extended hours. It won't be all during the day, because we know that many parts of our community aren't able to come and just take that time out. That will also include how do we spread some of those clinics as well. So whilst I can't give you detail on this day at this time, I give you assurance that that's very much part of our planning process to make sure that we spread that out. So I guess if you think of the entire Ashburton population and double it, that's how many vaccines we need to do. But also recognising, and this has been part of our, I guess, one of our early learnings in our challenge locally, is already members of our community, because they work in Christchurch or they work in Timaru Hospital or other areas, that accessing their vaccine in other spaces as well. So it's sort of quite an interesting balancing act of plan for the most, but respond to what comes through in your information and intel.
The other thing is we think that it's unlikely to be a recall system, so it won't be like how we run our flu vaccines, where we ask all A through H's to come in on this half day. It's more likely going to be self-selected. So it means that people will call when they want to make their own bookings, and they'll be able to go to any of the centres. So while we don't know how many centres are going to be in town once it's up and running, we do understand that people will be able to go to whichever centre. So if it's linked with a GP practice or a pharmacy, it doesn't have to be your usual GP practice or pharmacy.
Just thinking about the bookings, after you got your first vaccination, you booked in for the second one. Could someone go into the pharmacy or wherever and book their first one, instead of going on the 0800 number and just talk to someone and they book it for them for a few days later?
The national direction at the moment is they really want that booking system to be used, because they're using that to forecast how many vaccines they need in each area. So they will be trying to encourage that booking system at this stage in time. But I guess that's what that's our role, to keep advocating for ensuring that the best system's available for everybody. Because we'll also need to ensure that for some people, and we responded really well through COVID lockdown to ensure that our community, for people who don't have access to phones or don't have access to the internet, etc., that we have a system that enables everybody to get their booking system in. So we'll keep an eye on what's going on there.
Right. Councillor Wilson.
Yes. Am I hearing that the age system is gone? Once you start mass vaccinating, everybody who puts their name in, regardless of age, can get in?
not in the first phase. So we phase it. So we start with trying to vaccinate all the over 65. So we have focus group, and you'll see across the country they've sort of started in Auckland in a slightly different way because they had a higher risk community. And we move forward and we vaccinate the over 65s first, and then we vaccinate into the next phase. So, but the time frame's probably going to be quite tight between them. It won't be a long gap between one cohort finishing and the second cohort starting.
It's not really a question, it's just a comment. I don't know whether you oversee the flu vaccine, but it went extremely well this year with the drive-through ones. Really, really well. I mean, just was so simple.
Thank you.
It's a great compliment coming from Councillor Wilson. Councillor Lovett.
Buttering them up with this one.
Just a question you often hear. Can anyone have it? Do they need a health check first? Because I know a person, their father had a heart attack, and someone else has had clots, a blood clot. Do you just get your appointment, roll up, have it? You don't have to sort of be under health professional.
Okay, so part of the vaccination process is going through some checks to see whether or not it's appropriate to vaccinate the person. And so that would be one of the questions that the vaccinator would ask. And if there's any sort of grey area or hesitancy, there's a really good access number for us as vaccinators to contact, and they will give us the advice. But it is a very safe vaccine, and 9 times out of 10, the advice is to vaccinate.
I'd just like to reiterate that even our very experienced nurses working on the floor at the hospital and the primary care nurses who are vaccinating in the clinic, they rang that number and were very complimentary that it was answered all the time, there was no waiting, that they got excellent advice. Are you finding the same? And it just really supports that vaccinator to not feel any concern about whether they should vaccinate or not. And as I said, as Rachel has said, 99% of the time was go ahead.
Great. Councillors, any further questions of our presenters? If not, thank you very much, Bernie, Tony and Rachel for coming in. If you have a further update, you'll keep in touch with us. We're meeting every 2 weeks, so if you needed to come back, keep in touch with us as you do now. Bernie does anyway. So you can come back and give another update if need be. So thanks very much for that. It was really informative. Thank you. Great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Councillors, that takes us to the end of the open part of the meeting. So someone like to move into committee? Councillor Brown, Councillor Rawlinson, all in favour please say aye.
Aye.
Carried, thank you.